Hello everyone and welcome to WatchWord, and this is my good friend Alistair. Nice to meet you again. How's it all going? And he's here to talk about his wonderful Breitling today. So without further ado, let's get into it. So Alistair, name the watch that you've got here.
So this is a Breitling Navitimer 41, the 41 being the distinguishing factor on it, because you probably notice it doesn't have any additional dials. It's purely just the face itself and the calendar view.
Well, it certainly looks exceptionally beautiful. I'm very jealous of the watch indeed. So just tell me about the journey, how you came to purchase the watch and why you wanted to get it, really.
So I've always liked decent quality watches, but for me it was a case of getting to the point where I felt I had earned or deserved one. So for me, you have a watch for life. It's not an investment piece necessarily, it's something that you keep and then you potentially hand down over time, or you enjoy for an extended period of time. It should age well, it should have character, and you should impart memories into it, so it becomes much like a tattoo or anything else. It becomes part of you. So for me, I wanted to get something that I knew I would be happy with in 20, 30, 40 years time.
Wonderful. So what's your favourite detail about the dial, like the one thing that draws you to the watch?
So the thing that actually attracted, I originally wasn't going to buy this watch, but the thing that drew me to it was the gold bezel, the gold numerals and the hands on that black. The contrast from that, without any additional dials on the face, really, really drew me to it.
Wonderful. Like I said, it's a beautiful looking watch. But what else do you like about it? So not like the first thing, but perhaps the things that you sort of grew to love over the first couple of weeks or months, something you didn't initially sort of look at, but then it sort of drew you in slowly and subtly over time.
So that initial pop that I got essentially from seeing that contrast, and of course, as you are fully aware, Breitling are certainly impressive when it comes to their steel and how polished it is. It really draws the eye and captures the eye. But over time, what I really began to appreciate, I think, was some of the minor aesthetics. So there is a lot of detail imparted on that watch, as you typically would see in any Navitimer. But for me, the value in it was I appreciated the fact that it was relatively subdued. So there's a huge amount of detail, but it's not in your face.
Yeah, it's not too showy. That's a good point.
Yeah. And you sort of discover it over time. And that was something that really drew me to the watch over time as well.
I mean, I'm just looking at it now, I obviously don't wear it every day, I'm just looking at it now, but I mean, there's so many sort of small details where, you've got sort of, the B of the Breitling at the end. I know that's on a lot of watches, but it does sort of, just jump out on the second hand. And then you've got the arrow red tip there is sort of, lures me in as well. It's just sort of where it's beautifully set out. So, I mean, what would you say in terms of anything you'd want to change about it? Not every watch is perfect. There's always small things, the wearer would probably, want it if they were to be a watchmaker themselves. Is there anything that you would change or would like to see on the watch?
Certainly. So for me, there's a couple of things. I completely agree with you with the aspects of the small details itself, with the red tip of the second hand itself, the B for the Breitling, etc., and the relatively lack of words. I'd say for one thing, you buy a Rolex Daytona, and you essentially have a full paragraph to enjoy in front of you. So I'm glad it doesn't have that. But the few things I would potentially change, the main thing for me probably is the size. I think some of the Breitlings and the Navitimers have the capacity to be too big and are too showy, but I would certainly appreciate an extra couple of centimeters, I would have said.
No, very good, very good. I mean, just looking at it again, just the bezel around the edge is just beautiful. Sort of the coin edge. Is that something that you like, or is it just it's on a lot of Breitlings? But I suppose it does sort of lift the dial of the watch as well.
So the bezel's an interesting one. So for me, originally it was something I wasn't that much of a fan of, but it grew on me. So I thought it's a rather delicate aesthetic. It's a delicate touch and for myself, I'd like to see myself as a relative manly man. So that delicate touch was a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde to my personality. But over time, I came to really appreciate it because it adds a quality, it adds a nuance. So it's not too utilitarian, it's not too industrial. So I do like the elegance of that now.
That sounds good. I mean, and is the dial black or blue? I mean, in this light, it looks a little bit blue, but I think you said black earlier.
I did, yes. So the light can really change it. It's a rather interesting black, but certainly when the light hits it, it's almost sort of like a dark grey, blue-esque aesthetic to it. But yeah, it's very much a gold on black, but there's certainly a depth to it.
Nice. And what about the Lume? Does it, at night, does it just pop, or is it a bit more subtle? I mean, I'm not too sure on the Breitlings. I suppose, made for sort of Air Force and things. That I suppose that they need to be bright in in the dark. But
you'd think so. I was surprised actually for this Navitimer. So compared to others that I've seen, the Rolexes, of course, and some of the Omegas, I expected it to. I'd have to wear my sunglasses at night, but in this case, not really. It's relatively subdued. But to the point, of course, when you can read and you get the you get the information you're trying to draw from it.
Nice. And also, I mean, is it the brand for you, or is it the watch? You know, what lured you in first? Is it I must have a Breitling at all costs, or is it actually, you know, this model, you know, of watch is something that you just needed?
So I've always enjoyed the Breitling brand, but I've never been enamored by Breitling. I've historically associated it with a degree of chauvinism and show-off mentality, which didn't necessarily appeal to me too much historically. But I did obviously go have a look at multiple watches. I looked at Omegas, I do like the Speedmasters, looked at Rolex Daytonas, Submariners, and I did look at various Breitling Navitimers and Chronomats as well. Most of the Breitlings I felt to be too busy and too flamboyant for long term. I want to be a 70-year-old who's not sitting there feeling ashamed of the fact that I'm wearing rather excessive bling on my wrist.
How do you wear it? You know, how does it make you feel when you wear it? You know, is it going out? You know, just tell me about, you know, how it feels when you wear the watch, really.
So for me, it is a special occasion watch. It's not something I would wear day to day. I'd have no objections to wearing it day to day, but I enjoy the comparative exclusivity of reserving it for when I'm going out, going for meals. It's typically at an event more for me than anything else. It's something to enjoy for that glimmer of a moment when I have a look at it when I'm in a restaurant or I'm going to work or going to a meeting. It makes me feel like it's special. It gives me that momentarily bliss of seeing something that's rather unique and brings me joy.
Wonderful. I'm sure a lot of our listeners and all watch wearers would definitely echo that for their favourite watch. And I suppose finally the last question for me is just sort of, you know, why should people own this watch? Why should people go out and buy it? And you've given a good story, sort of you personally, but why should others buy this model of watch?
So for me, now Breitling as a brand obviously has a particular individual who tends to gravitate towards Breitling. They like the aesthetic, they like the in-your-face aspects of the brand. But for me, this Navitimer specifically appeals to me because it maintains aspects of that glimmer of the gold I can see now reflecting in the light, for example, against the face. That is certainly eye-popping to some extent, but it feels subdued enough to be not a Breitling. It's a Breitling that's not a Breitling, and that's ultimately what I think people would value in this Navitimer.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Alistair. And again, you know, this is the second or third episode of WatchWord here, and it's really to start a conversation, and I want it to be about why people love watches and what is their favourite one in their collection. So if you're interested on coming on board, then, you know, drop me a line and I'd love to work with you and do something just like this. Ask these questions, take out some close-up shots of the watch and just celebrate that watch community. So you know where to find me, WatchWord on Instagram, on Facebook and Twitter and others. And let's just keep having that conversation. So again, welcome to WatchWord. Thanks very much. Goodbye.